All right, I think we'll get started this morning. Thank you everyone for joining us for our latest installment of Solutions for Success. Today's topic is effortless document migration from file servers to SharePoint. So definitely something we've been working with many clients on over the last couple of years and continue to work with others that may have file server environments that may have existed for many, many years, and some are still trying to figure out how they retire these and get fully into the cloud. So let's jump right in. So the agenda today, quick overview on Point Alliance for those that may not be familiar with our organization. Are you ready to retire your file server? Which app, when, so what do I use? Migration approaches, some high-level discussion on meta tags and metadata versus directory structure and folders and subfolders. Some best practices, data sensitivity and retention for those looking to take things sort of a step further than just the simple migration. And finally, the role or importance of user training in this whole process. So my name is Jonathan Hamilton. I'm the president here at Point Alliance, and I've been involved in a number of these projects with organizations of many sizes, from startups to multinationals. I am joined today by our CEO, John Zeri, as well.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our session.
And again, for those that aren't familiar with Point Alliance, we are based in Toronto, Canada. We are a Microsoft Solutions partner with a number of designations, predominantly in modern work, which has to do with SharePoint business process automation, security, whether that's the security of your data, your devices, etc. Digital and app innovation in Azure, so a lot of custom development and integration work in that space, and data and AI Azure. So when we talk about analytics, Power BI, and data lakes, etc., again, all areas that we specialize in here at Point Alliance. Again, we're very proud that 100% of our team is certified in Microsoft technology. So staying up to date on sort of the latest and greatest advancements from Microsoft is something we strive for every day. So are you ready to retire your file server? We could ask you that, or we could discuss, how you figure out if you're ready to retire it. So first of all, why should I migrate to the cloud? The main reasons of retiring your file server is that it probably has been created over time. And again, the folders and subfolders have been created. And we've just got a comment that people cannot hear the audio. So I'm not sure if that is for everyone. No, Peter says he can hear. All right, Susan, I'm not sure. It may be on your end. Okay, so we will forge ahead. And Susan, maybe you can check your audio settings just to see, but definitely there is audio going with the changes in the slides. So again, just coming back to, why should you migrate? It's really the benefits of moving to the cloud and moving to the M365 environment and SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams and all the enhancements those give you that you would not have had in your file server folder and subfolder or map drive environment. So again, the real-time collaboration, the fact that we can be in the same document at the same time with 2 or 5 people working on a proposal, working on a submission response, working on a document, version control of the documents. Again, super important. Those who are more familiar with file servers, you'll see files with people's initials at the end and the dates and version 1 or version 2 right in the name of the file. Again, all of that is handled for you in the cloud. Secure sharing of files, certainly extremely important, both within the organization and at sometimes working with partner organizations or customers, clients, or sharing with other external parties. And again, just the efficiency of getting work done. So a couple of the, diving a little deeper into a couple of those things, again, the scalability and flexibility of the cloud, the flexibility of storage size, not having to worry about hardware upgrades and software upgrades, whether that's your operating system, whether that's your application platform, your hardware capacity from the standpoint of hard drives or memory or processing power. Again, this really simplifies people's lives, that you just really need to manage different aspects of, the security of the environment and the files, and the overall space that the files are taking. And so certainly it provides a much higher level of scalability and flexibility once you're up in the cloud, as opposed to managing one or multiple file servers. Data security, again, we can do a number of different things in the cloud. So some people may think, on-premise file servers are secure. We're controlling access to those file servers, again, ever since COVID and hybrid work and remote work. Again, additional VPNs, remote access, and a lot of organizations, quite honestly, have moved into the cloud for some level of file storage or collaboration, if not fully. But we can encrypt these files. First of all, they are encrypted at rest in the Microsoft Cloud, so people should be aware of that. We can encrypt them with sensitivity labels, and we'll discuss that a little later. Multi-factor authentication, of course, is something we always recommend for our clients accessing files or the Microsoft tenant in general. Again, other Microsoft tools for advanced threat protection. These are all features that can help safeguard your organization and your organization's data. And the last thing I'd throw in here is, these things need to be managed on an ongoing basis. So when we say you've got all of these things at your disposal in the cloud, definitely true. That's not to say that you shouldn't audit how your security configurations are set up every 6 to 12 months to make sure that there's a clear understanding of who has access to what. And certainly a number of times we've gone into organizations that may not have been fully aware that their users may have been able to share more information that they were aware of externally. And so locking down some of those, whether it's SharePoint sites or Teams or different areas of the tenant, are always things that should be reviewed. So the topic today was retiring your file server and moving to SharePoint, which is a true statement. The reality is that SharePoint data can be surfaced through a few different means, and that can be through OneDrive, through Teams, or directly through SharePoint. SharePoint is really the document storage and repository behind all three of these. So there is consistency from that aspect, but people do get confused sometimes as to, okay, I thought I was just moving from one environment, a file server, to SharePoint. Now you're telling me things can go into Teams or OneDrive. How do I know where to put things? How do I know where to find things? How do I know the security that's wrapped around it? And these are certainly all good questions. At a very high level, users should think of OneDrive as replacing their personal drive, and those are files that they're working on themselves. They may share links out to other individuals to collaborate or modify those files, but it's really things that they're working on for themselves. And when we say just me doesn't mean birthday party pictures and personal income tax statements. It's just me from an organizational perspective. Microsoft Teams, on the other hand, is the collaborative environment for you and your team. And certainly one of the important aspects to understand and be clear is that people with access to Teams and the documents and the content within a team all have the same level of access. So that is edit, modify, create, delete. So it is a very collaborative environment, but meant for specific file creation and collaboration. And then SharePoint we can think of as wider organization access as well as different security levels. So, we usually use the example of human resources as the example of a department that may have a Microsoft team where they're working on policies, they're working on updated corporate information, benefits, things like that to be shared. Once it's finalized in the Microsoft team, it then gets published out into SharePoint, which is managed by the HR team, but that the whole organization may have view access to this content. So a lot of times security is going to drive where the files should be migrated from on your file server, because again, you're going to have a mix of all types of files. Again, personal drives that are mapped, department drives or folders that are created, organizational wide catch-all folders, and then you probably are going to have 4 or 8 or 12 levels deep of subfolders where things may have different security. So we'll talk about how we address those sorts of things. But again, where do I move my files, and the difference between OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint needs to be made clear to everybody so they have a better understanding of where to put their files and where to look for those files moving forward. So looking at each of these specifically, and you'll be provided with this presentation, so we don't necessarily need to go deep into all of these, but migrating your personal drive to OneDrive is, a relatively straightforward process. One of the things I'd say that we've run into with some clients is the difference between their corporate OneDrive and a personal OneDrive that they may have set up and may be syncing to their device. So again, that's something that may need to get cleaned up or reconfigured as part of this process. So with all of these, step one is really going to be, clean up your data. Again, there's a high likelihood that there's lots of stuff in your personal drive and your corporate drive that may be outdated, that may be irrelevant, that may not be needed. There may also be lots of stuff that you need to keep from a compliance and regulatory perspective. So, just making a generalized statement of anything, I haven't touched in the last year, I don't need to move over, is probably not necessarily a correct statement. So clean up your personal drive, set up OneDrive on your machine. Again, a lot of this can be tied for those that are using Microsoft Intune as well, can be leveraged to do some of this configuration and push these settings out. Sync your personal drive to OneDrive, wait for that sync to complete, verify the migration and the files that have been moved, update links and references, and communicate with others. One of the things that we won't go deep into today is you can also create shortcuts from SharePoint into your OneDrive. We've found as part of these migrations, that's an important aspect for users that are more accustomed to using a Windows Explorer type interface than a web browser into SharePoint and OneDrive and Office.com. So you can definitely connect SharePoint into OneDrive, or maybe you've got local tools like Adobe and things like that that a certain user set will use, or users needing to upload files onto the web or to other portals that they can't easily drag and drop from a browser and need to do so from a Windows Explorer interface. So again, just some things to think about around OneDrive. But again, at a very high level, relatively straightforward. We're mapping users and their personal drives into their OneDrive accounts in M365, and away we go. Teams migration, and again, we talked about how do we determine whether folders and drives are getting moved to Teams and SharePoint, and most of the time that's dictated by security and access as to where the best place to put those files are, who the target audience is, what type of collaboration is required. But again, identify the files and folders to migrate. So there's certainly a validation and mapping exercise here to be done with users and owners of root files off of file servers. Set up the necessary Microsoft Teams sites. Again, a Teams site has a number of aspects that happen in the background, of which one is a SharePoint site that is driving the documents and document management of the team. plan the migration, migrate the data, validate the migration, and train the users. So again, within a team, for those that are familiar with teams, we can have public and private channels. Again, this is used to filter the content. A public channel really is just a folder in Microsoft SharePoint that all members of the team have access to. A private channel is an area where only a subset of users of that team have access to. And what's happening in the background is there's actually a completely separate SharePoint site that's being set up that only has those users or the subset of users within that team. And that's how that's managed from a document security perspective in the background. And then finally, the third portion, the SharePoint migration itself. Again, very similar steps here. Plan the migration, prepare the file server, so clean up the files, make sure that we're not unnecessarily moving junk or outdated information into the cloud. Set up SharePoint. Again, that's a single bullet, but there certainly is more there as we talk about setting up the necessary SharePoint sites, document libraries within those sites, whether we have folders that we're going to use, and we'll get into that in a few minutes as well. Migrate the files, update our links and references, communicate with users, and we probably should have not just monitor and maintain, but again, train the users is a common theme across all these areas, because we really want to make it as easy as possible for users to use the new platform. So meta tags and directory structure. When Microsoft launched SharePoint in the cloud, they were encouraging users as much as possible to flatten their folder and subfolder structure and leverage meta tags, which would allow you to sort and filter and search on your files in a much easier way, and not have to drill down 4 or 5 folders deep to find what you were looking for, and having a 2025 subfolder in 100 different areas. So there is, and we'll get into it, the benefits of leveraging metadata, and then the reality of continuing to use some level of folders and subfolders as you move into M365. And certainly we've seen our clients, for the most part, use a hybrid of the two. And we'll discuss that in subsequent slides. So, as I had mentioned, the directory structure, we've talked about what this looked like on the file system. It may be 4 subfolders deep, it might be 12. In SharePoint, it's really leveraging sites and libraries and folders to restructure or simplify this content structure. And then meta tags and metadata and term stores and all sorts of great stuff in SharePoint. So we can eliminate the need for some of these subfolders by replacing it with meta tags. And perfect examples would be, year. Year could be a metadata tag associated to a document, as opposed to having it either in the file name or in a folder that says 2025. It could just be a tag. The department could be a meta tag. Content type, if we do a lot of meetings, is it an agenda item? Is it a action items? Is it a documents or speakers for that meeting? So we can do a lot with metadata, and it is very powerful and very useful. Again, there's a balance there as to how much a user is realistically going to put in. It's one thing for me to save a file on a file server and just find the right subfolder to put it in. It's another to say, oh, put it in this SharePoint site and then tag that file with 8 pieces of metadata. I think you're going to find that for the most part, your users are going to start working around the process that you've implemented. Not because it's a bad process, but there's a willingness to probably tag a document with 2 or 3 pieces of metadata, but not 8 or 10 that's going to really slow them down and sort of burden them. So again, as I had mentioned at the beginning, in some cases, it's going to be more efficient to use meta tags. In others, it's going to be, too much work for the users. The reality is that, you have the choice, and really what we've seen is a hybrid is what seems to work best for people. From a security perspective, again, we would encourage organizations to set security at the site level, at the document library level, and not at the folder and subfolder level, just from an ongoing management and governance perspective. It makes it easier to manage. It's also easier for users to put files in the right place and know that the right security is going to get wrapped around them. And again, you're going to leverage groups as much as possible. And these could be M365 groups that are created as part of a Microsoft team. It could be a security group that you've set up in the cloud or are syncing from your on-premise AD. So there's a number of different ways to leverage that. But again, we'd encourage organizations to sort of simplify their security where possible, and certainly leverage groups as opposed to naming specific users. That makes it more difficult to manage when users either join the organization, leave the organization, or there's any sort of change in their role that may dictate different access to different types of content. So high-level best practices of the overall process, and a number of these we've sort of touched on. Review and clean up your file server files. Archiving certainly is an aspect there, and what do you really need? Is a backup fine? Is an archive required? Who needs to have access to that archive, and how accessible does it need to be? Establish who the content owners are. So really, and this is something that takes some organizations a while. Maybe you've got 50 root folders off your file server. Really, there should be a content owner or ownership group of each of those root folders. So that could be HR, it could be finance, it could be IT, communications, operations, whomever it is, but someone needs to own the content. Determine what the security requirements are. And this one's important because not necessarily what the security has been historically, but what does it really need to be? What do we need to secure and why? Because we are looking to simplify this and really make it easier for people to manage and understand. Create new site library structure with appropriate group security. We've sort of talked about this. The security in the previous bullet is going to dictate in a lot of cases what the best structure is going to be to support what we need. Use the Microsoft migration tool to map and migrate files and folders. This is a great tool that's free from Microsoft. It allows you to migrate to SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive, and definitely something that we've seen is sufficient in most of these migration projects. Train your users. Again, super important and should never be underestimated. For some users, this will be change management, and we need to do it carefully. I think we may have jumped ahead 2 slides there.
Sorry, I saw the user training. I thought I was behind.
And I know we've got 5 minutes left, so I think there's only a couple of slides. Data sensitivity and retention is a great topic for those that are looking to incorporate that either as part of their migration or a phase 2 after getting their content over. Some of this will depend on your M365 user licensing as well and what you're entitled to. But sensitivity labeling, again, we can track and do different things with files based on how they are labeled. And we can apply those labels based on a site where they're saved, based on a user who's created them. But just think of it as, regular internal files. We are not, super concerned about confidential files. Maybe we want, to track those and have a subset of users, and we can have, conditional access policies and things that can restrict how people access some of this content and whether their device is compliant or managed by the organization or not. And then maybe strictly confidential, we want to get alerts anytime somebody is emailing one of these files out of the organization or printing it or downloading it and things like that. We can even take it a step further that we're encrypting those files based on the sensitivity label. So lots of good work that can be done there. And then data retention labeling, again, is a separate type of labeling that we can also apply to files and emails, and will marry up with our retention schedule and perhaps what the compliance is of different types of data that we may be interacting with. So definitely we can do a whole session on this, but just wanted to bring it to people's attention, as we do have a number of organizations that have migrated a lot of content into M365 and are now looking to govern that content in a bit better way. Now I think we move on to the more detailed user training slide. And we've talked about this in a few previous slides, but a couple of things just to highlight. We need to make sure that users are comfortable with the tools, and depending on what they're moving from, there may be an aspect of change management here. Users are hybrid. They don't have the same access to sort of IT support folks that maybe they used to. So super important to make sure that we provide enough training that they are comfortable. Having the right structure set up so that if users put documents in the right place, the right security gets applied. Again, we want to take that decision making out of the user's hands of who should have access to this. I'm not sure who's in this group. Put the document in the right place, and the right groups are going to wrap the right security around it, and users shouldn't need to be that concerned. Don't require users to apply too many tags to the documents. We touched on this. So leverage metadata, but leverage it in a way that's usable, makes sense to users, and does not burden them, but gets you where you want to get to. And then another couple points, change how users start to create documents. And this one sounds simple, but it is a change. Start having them create a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet from the site or library where they want to save it, so that it's not being saved to their desktop by default or their OneDrive, but it's saving right into that repository. That's one thing to think about. And then the last bullet, we really shouldn't be emailing attachments with internal emails anymore. We should be leveraging document links to these documents that are in OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint. We shouldn't have these attachments floating around with long descriptive names and those sorts of things. So, and that really needs to start from the top down with the key stakeholders and senior management, and making sure that they are following along with this as well to make sure everybody complies.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan, for all those information. Lots of good stuff. Just for housekeeping, we recorded this event, so it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel. I know we had a bit of audio issue at the beginning for a couple of users, and also the presentation going to be on our website as well. So just to let you know that our Solution for Success webinars runs third Tuesday of each month. We just take a small break in August, but it is happening. So lots of good events coming up. If you did enjoy the session today, we encourage you to take a moment, just scan this QR code with your phone. We would love your 5-star Google reviews. You don't even have to put a review, just give us 5-star. We'd be happy with that. And if you have anything to add to it, even better. So a moment for that. And also as a thank you, we normally have a draw for the Amazon gift card, but what we're going to do so thank you for attending. Each of the attendee will receive a $20 Amazon gift card, will be sent to you within the next 24 hours with the email you provided on the registration. So thank you again, and we look forward to see you at our upcoming events.